Derek.
Hey, Derek.
You in a
It's
bunker?
Thursday, the 1st of October. It's potentially the autumn time, possibly winter. I don't know. Who's keeping track of dates anymore? It's gone 9:30. If you're watching this, you're not watching TV. You're watching Broadsheet on Telly. Welcome back. We've had a little bit of a holiday, so we have. How's everyone doing?
We were bringing in the harvest. That's what we were doing.
Bringing in a massive harvest because
I mean, is it? I mean, is this the end of the autumn or is this the middle of the? What's happening in terms of a season?
I think it's just
October
one
today.
big season. It is
At the
October.
moment, it's just
November,
one big lockdown. It's just one big season.
Well, there you go. I'm back to reading Siegfried Sassoon and stuff with all his October stuff about the First World War because the winter starts in November, right? Properly.
The endless winter. We better introduce ourselves. Joining, I'm Neil Curran, the world's best Curran hosting Broadsheet on Telly. We'll go in terms of distance to the epicenter of Dublin. The Queen of Crumlin. What did we call it? The Countess of Crumlin. Celebrity accountant Vanessa, yes, Vanessa Foran.
Vanessa Contessa. It's good. I like it.
Vanessa Contessa. How's Vanessa?
I'm good. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
And then going over to the north side. You're on the north side, Jimmy, aren't you?
I'm well over on the north side. I started way north in Meath, and now I've kind of ended up more in West Britland here, but north side still.
So if the signal breaks up, it's because of its location.
And the Illuminati, Neil, come on.
And the Illuminati, of course. Welcome back, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm great. I'm fantastic. I'm thriving.
Good. Glad to hear it. And then the king of the mattress, the mattress master, all things mattress, for reasons best left to the comment section. King. The California King and all such titles. Derek, welcome back, Derek.
Hi, Neil. I'm sitting out here in Las Gatas. In the fall here, we're only into 2 seasons, and we're into fall now officially. And there's little bits of ash falling on my iPad as I speak.
Oh, the wineries, yeah, man, Jesus.
Shocking. I mean, Calistoga is a beautiful little town just north of Napa, and the whole place is evacuated. And some famous wineries destroyed, famous restaurants burnt to the ground. And like the smoke, it's unhealthy air quality out here at the moment. As I said, there's little bits of ash just falling on the iPad as I'm talking to you. The air quality is described as unhealthy. It's 157 whatever units to measure it in, and anything like over 100 is unhealthy. So yeah, but apart from that, all is good.
Is that a continuation, Derek, of the gender reveal party fire that started a month ago or 3 weeks ago, or is it just separate? Random?
No, it's separate. There's hundreds of fires happening all over the state. You know, it's I think the gender reveal one was down south, close towards LA, I think. But this is like north of San Francisco, north of Napa, and it's just like it's incredible. It's frightening. Like, obviously your thoughts are with the people who've lost everything, and the firefighters who are trying to battle the fires. You have firefighters like trying to stop the fire crossing the highway, because if it crosses the highway, it's going to cause more mayhem on the far side. And like they're incredibly brave people, because it's a frightening sight to see. Like it's like hell on earth, you know, when you see the fires going. Thankfully, we're away from it, and our inconvenience is the smoke. It's the air quality. It's not being able to go for a walk, or so we're very lucky in that regard. But for the poor people who are under threat and the firefighters who are dealing with it, it's horrific.
Jeez. But you're doing fine, Derek. That's all I wanted to know.
I'm going to have a beer here, and I'm having a nice Thai lunch, and I'll show you my contraption here. It's a
What was that? Is that a beer? This is nothing wrong with you.
Does that gentleman know he's live on the most?
So, my own little tap here. So yeah, like I'm not too bad, but I really it's I have some respect for the firefighters and what they do and what they have to deal with.
Well, we might stick with you actually, Derek, because we know there's a lot of things happening in the US, and we will get to that. But I did want to talk to you about your education, and the leaving
lack of it.
lack of it. the obviously we've talked about the Leaving Cert fiasco, and it just seems it just won't go away. So we're looking at over 6,000 Leaving Cert papers that were marked incorrectly, which I believe is 12% or more possibly of papers that were marked this year. What's your thoughts, Derek? Are we starting with calling for heads to roll, or where do we even begin with this mess?
Well, look, it's shocking, right? And again, the poor students who are affected. I mean, it's obviously such a massive deal for them. I suppose you could broaden the conversation. Obviously, this is a mess, right? It's incompetence, and looking at the people on the panel, they all seem like very eminent people who are in charge of making these decisions. But I mean, somebody messed up, and I never want to be calling for heads, really, but somebody has to be answerable. Somebody has to stand up and say, "Look, I'm the one who messed up here," or we're the people who messed up, and take responsibility for it. But I suppose I wanted to broaden out and talk about Leaving Cert in general. And there's such a fuss made about it at home in Ireland, and other countries don't do it. The other countries don't have the same focus on end of school exam. Over here in the States, I was working in a high school last year, and people knew, like in the October, November the previous year, while they were seniors, whether they got accepted into college the following year or not. So they graduated high school, and that was an achievement in itself, getting their high school diploma. But their college acceptance was independent of graduating high school. Obviously, they had to graduate high school, but they already knew what they were getting. In Ireland, you have this big focus on the Leaving Cert and on points. And there's this nonsense that people think that the points total is an indication of their intelligence, and it's not. The points total rewards hard work, and people work hard to get high points. And there's plenty of people who've missed out on college courses that would be well able to do those college courses otherwise. The big problem is the lack of places. They need to increase the number of places, and then and that gives people more options to do whatever they want to do. Again, there's this thing in Ireland where there's a prestige nonsense type thing. So, like, for example, if you want to do something like forensics in Trinity, that's somehow more prestigious than just plain ordinary science in Trinity, because it's higher points. But the reason why it's higher points is it's a much smaller course. And what a lot of students, Leaving Cert students, don't realise is when they go to do forensics in Trinity, they're going to be in a lot of science classes with people who got science. You know, so if you're doing forensics and you have to do chemistry or biology, you're going to be in with people who are in the science stream. But there's a prestige thing around. I'm doing forensics, so or whatever it is. It could be. That's just one example. So the colleges love having high points because that gives them the prestige. Students love getting the high points courses because that it's a status thing. But I'm over here in Silicon Valley, and I know people who've worked in very high level positions, and the people I know, like, none of them went to Trinity or UCD. I'm the one who went to Trinity or UCD. I graduated UCD and graduated in Trinity. Degree in UCD and master's in Trinity.
You've just let your own argument.
Yeah.
Derek.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, right? The marketplace ultimately decides.
Let me finish my point. My point is, the people over here, I'm the only one from those prestigious places. Everyone else went to ITs, stuff like that. And they're all doing very successful, incredibly successful. People here in high level positions who went like to the lower prestigious colleges in Ireland. and they've all done fantastically well. So my point is, like, there's too much focus on, like, UCD and Trinity. There's way too much focus on doing a particular course.
There'd be no argument against that, Derek. It's like almost a separate argument to what's happened this week.
Exactly.
We're dealing with fucking rank incompetence is what we're dealing with here. Now, I would be on the same page as you in terms of the CAO and the focus on the 1 or 2 days in June that you might have that kid might have a bad day, will decide the rest of his life, in inverted commas. I have a whole problem with third level education, actually, which we'll talk about some other time. But we're kind of gone off point. I think we should talk about Norma Foley. I think we should talk about Varadkar and Martin knowing about these 600 kids not having
6,
college
000.
play. Well, 6,000 as well, but there's 600 to 800 places that are gone, not a begging, whatever the opposite is to a begging, and there's not going to be filled. So how do these kids get recompense for this? How do they get redressed for this? What's going to happen?
So there's been two things that happened. Norma, well, was it Norma or I think it was Norma said that the kids won't be left behind. They will be accommodated. But
is that not from the same lexicon as we're all in this together? I'd like to
absolutely. But the universities have stipulated that they can't guarantee that they can accommodate everyone. So we're in this educational stalemate. So inevitably what we may see happening is some of the kids are going to have to defer or being encouraged to defer till next year. And that's going to cause a further bottleneck because we know that there are students who are deferring because they don't want to be doing online lectures and what that means. The calculated grades, and maybe you know a little bit more about this, Derek. The calculated grades, the algorithm as such, was developed by a Canadian company, and so I guess they're on the hook for that. What that means to the state, financially or otherwise, I don't know. But I think you're right, Jimmy, that at the end of the day, the book stops at Norma. The two key areas from a COVID perspective that were always going to be the focus. Primarily, we're going to be health, obviously, and then education next. And she already had a reputation of being an absentee minister, regardless of what she's doing behind the scenes. But she certainly hasn't been in the public eye. Certainly hasn't been providing confidence to the public and certainly the Leaving Cert students. But one of the things I was thinking about today is, can you imagine being a Leaving Cert student? I mean, when we did the Leaving Cert, I was certainly a last minute crammer, but you had that stress for a short period of time. The Leaving Cert is technically over, and you still have a huge amount of kids who are still have the Leaving Cert on their mind, on their plate, and all the burdens that are
some of them are doing it in November. But
which again, college places have gone out, or the CEO have gone out. People have started college. Now they've been told, all universities are in level 3. They've paid for accommodation. They're having house parties. There's the circle of blame now that's surrounding you. I was reading on one of the well-known message boards about somebody wanted to dob in their student neighbors, who are having house parties and all the rest. Through no fault of their own, the students are being crucified by the state for incompetence. And they're also having to contend with the added stress of what COVID is doing and the social stigma of being young during times of coronavirus. So I think we failed that generation. We failed that and there's nobody offering any kind of, there's nobody taking the forefront. Norma, Leo, Michal, whatever, nobody is standing up and saying, we have fucked up and this is what we are going to do to address it, rightly or wrongly. But that seems to be a trend in everything that has happened over the past 7-8 months, regardless of whether it's the coalition or the previous government. It seems to be the trend that it's kind of like throw shit at the wall, see what sticks, and we'll see complaints.
Neil, right? And I don't know what were the guys. Every time you go to criticize a decision made by the government, whether the current government or the acting government, you're considered, an anti-masker or alt-right or something like that. This decision, the Leaving Cert, and Derek, no matter what you have to say about it, it has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
The entire, from the moment students go into junior infants, they are groomed to prepare for this exam. So changing it overnight is never going to happen. So you were in the education system here yourself long enough That was when you attempt to change it from within. The students were preparing for the Leaving Cert right up until, certainly till March, until when the schools closed down. And you had an entire workforce of educators, the people that were supposed to be educators and college level educators. And they couldn't figure out a way to reconfigure classrooms to allow one class, 1 year to return. That's nothing to do with algorithms or science. It has to do with knowing 2 meters apart.
And that's
there was a huge capacity for the Leaving Cert to go ahead. And there was no problem correcting scripts because they get shipped out anyway. So this idea that it got parked, as far as I remember, Joe McHugh wanted it to go ahead. It was Leo that said, well, maybe it'd go ahead in July. So when they moved out of the June thing, you kind of knew it wasn't going to happen. But as far as I'm aware, Joe McHugh was saying it would go ahead and they'll figure it out. And I don't know why they didn't figure it out. It had nothing to do with algorithms. And then it got cancelled. And then they were doing this grading system with the thing. They knew from the UK that this whole algorithm thing was going to cause mayhem. But they actually didn't check the whole algorithm because I know nothing about code. So if it's broken, it doesn't work. That's what I know about code. But I also know you build the code to requirements. Now, as far as I know, that it was using elements from results from the junior cert, the non-core subjects, the results from the non-core subjects. And I read the core subjects being English, Irish, maths, okay? But instead of picking the highest scores of their non-core subjects, they picked the lowest. And then CSPE was included in the average. So what has that got to do with honours, maths or chemistry?
So the way it
works, absurd.
The way it worked was they picked the core subjects, English, Irish, maths, and it was supposed to be their 2 best other subjects.
Yeah, and the code, the algorithm was prepared, actually took the 2 lowest.
2 lowest, and CSP was supposed to be counted.
So that was an error before it was let loose on the predicted grades sent in. So that was an error.
Yeah.
And then I know from the teenager who's looked into it, and she's in a school that's actually launched a challenge, right? But if a school was usually known for having a higher than average, let's just say the Irish schools did better in Irish, or St. Killian's, the German school, did better in German, that higher than average was removed. Mm-hmm. So there was another error. So that had nothing to do with the algorithm. That had to do with the instruction the coders got. Now, and I know nothing about code. Listen, I can't wire a plug, so I'm not entirely sure I even have that right. But it seems to me that once they decided not to go ahead with the Leaving Cert, they had plenty of time to come up with it.
But I mean, look,
figuring out at least we need that. We need to make sure it's the highest grade from the Intercert you take, not the lowest.
But look at what happened 12, 15 years ago in Old MC. I mean, they've got track here with this kind of stuff, not getting Peter Principle to death, like, you know, where they get some. I'm not whoever wrote the code. I don't know, and I know nothing about code, but the algorithm. I know the Brits ditched the algorithm before we did, but. Look what happened with the computers, the voting computers 15 years ago. I mean, the dog in the street, literally the proverbial, everybody that knew anything about computers knew that was never going to happen. Why are we allowing this stuff to consistently happen? We're talking about minutiae now. We're getting into the code. But the bigger thing is Norma Foley and Leo Varadkar and Micheál Martin knew about this during the week. Leo Varadkar made the Premier fuck up by not allowing the Leaving Cert go ahead.
I'm pretty sure it was Leo that took the decision away from Joe McHugh. And then when they appointed the new government, Joe McHugh wasn't anywhere near it, when he probably should have been kept thereabouts. Now, I know he turned down another job, a different ministry, but that, I suppose, is neither here nor there. The point is, none of this, if you look at it reasonably, none of it has to do with code at all. If they actually sat down and reconfigured just one school year, that's all they had to do. And the idea of changing the leaving cert and it's wrong, and like that's talk that's too late for that now. Because you have an entire freshers week completely put out of sorts. Because a lad that was partying in Galway last week now hears he's after getting something in Trinity this week. You know, I like it. And now you have the story there where you have this ripple effect. People are deferring. But you people that deferred from last year trying to get in, and now you have another ripple effect the following year. So this again is going back to the fact that our entire infrastructure, and in this case now it's our education, has been completely ignored and lack of resources. I mean, if they were really interested in really testing could we cope, they would have pushed the leaving cert out. They would have got it done. I don't know. I think it's the whole pandemic has actually shown just how shit the country the state the country has gotten into pre-COVID, and now it's after been tested and it's failed on every level.
Well, in all fairness, this coalition, in all fairness to them, I think it's exposing all of these characters in America, in the UK, here, and everything for the inepts that they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look at the judge. The judges, as you were, you're grand. Yet students in Cork and Galway are getting reprimanded by their college authorities for having parties outside in their gaps.
Stigmatized and demonized.
And there's a Supreme Court judge who wrote the fucking thing.
I know.
Stop it.
Yeah.
So how are they going to get out of this? I mean, accountability aside of what's happened, like, and we can, we are, to use their phrase, we are where we are. So how are they going to move forward with this? Jeopardize a year of these kids' lives. So Derek, if you're in the hot seat, what are you going to do to fix it?
Well, just for the one group of people who are licking their lips over this are the guys down in the forecourts or the law library. I mean, I'm sure there's people are going to take cases and look for compensation for the stress and the inconvenience and for, as you say, wasting a year of their lives. So there's definitely going to be court cases and people.
Well, I'm aware of one. I'm aware of one significant one. Yeah.
Yeah,
but the numbers in that are extraordinary.
If you missed out in a year and you have the mental stress and all that sort of stuff, I mean, you're entitled to be recompensed for that. I made a point a few weeks ago when we were talking about this, and I fully believe that students should have been advantaged, right? So if the teacher was thinking, is this student a C or a B, then they're a B. If you always give them error on the side of, like, if I'm thinking they could get a B, they get a B. And I think the solution is more college places. That's what has to happen.
Well, they're building enough college accommodation, student accommodation.
But people need to be given the courses that they applied for and that they could do. That's the short-term solution. Long-term solution is a, like, I think, Vanessa, you're right about the incompetence, and Jimmy said as well, the incompetence in government across areas and across, it's shocking. I mean, earlier on we saw the nursing homes, that's a major scandal that still hasn't been fully dealt with or fully nobody held accountable for that. The education system, like, this is a fiasco. There's no getting away from that. And again, people need to be held accountable.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. They won't. They don't do accountability at all. If they were, that judge would have been asked to stand down.
But in terms of what should happen, I think there needs to be increased availability of college places. Put the resources in, give people options.
And in fairness, with that, Derek, look at the first semester in most colleges now with this lockdown in Dublin. Anyway, that all courses are online courses at the moment. So, where's the problem in just opening up more Zoom?
Exactly.
And these,
exactly. exactly. Yeah.
Well, I suppose they'd be the trickier ones that are kind of more lab-based. Let's just say med, dent, veterinary. I mean, their first year anyway. Anyone who got med, dent, or veterinary in the CAO route, that class is actually the same year. It's all pre-med, pre-dent, pre-vet. It's kind of pretty much the same year. So they could probably go anywhere to do that and come back and then go into first or second, next year.
Yeah.
But now is the perfect time. I mean, look at since March, right? I know some of my friends that are teaching in the college where I was, they had to change everything overnight. Things had to go online and all this stuff when the pandemic first hit. And so it looks like this is the perfect time in history, in educational history, for a paradigm shift. I hate to use that term, but you know what I mean? For actually rethink how are we going to present stuff to kids? How are we going to disseminate information and fulfill course materials to kids without being in situ? That's what they have to look at. That ties into a whole lot of stuff. I mean, again, I don't want to just be ranting about Fianna Fáil, but they've been promising broadband rollout, for instance, since 1996, right? They promised 99% broadband rollout in 1996. Check it out. And I know Leitrim and Cavan are still fucking wastelands. Well, they always were, but I mean, in terms of broadband.
Well, you had to wait for Fine Gael to get in to make sure a certain person won the contract, though.
Well, there you go. More of it, you see. But seriously, that means that for any new working model for third level and second level secondary education, we're going to have to be like the Japanese and have gigabyte download speeds and stuff. Because if you're living in Leitrim, you're just forget it. You just can't be educated. You can't do anything, obviously. No offense to Leitrim. Lovely Leitrim. But you know what I mean? If you don't have broadband, right? So
that's true. There's the way they have kind of configured the country, and not just in the COVID environment. For the last few years, there has been a very strong need to have broadband and access to broadband, even since the Celtic Tiger.
Absolutely. It's since 1996, I'm telling you. And I mean, I remember personally having a big problem. I just moved back from America and I'd gotten a job here. And I remember trying to get a peer-to-peer ISDN line. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
That was a big deal, right? And that was, I don't know what that was, a couple of hundred megabytes. It was nothing, but it was the fastest. And to do this project with the people in California, they were saying, just get an ISDN line. I went down to get a peer-to-peer. It was $2,500 a month is what they wanted.
I was about to say it was thousands, yeah.
Appalling. I said, Jesus, I'd be sure I'd move over there for 6 months. And they never got it together. I moved down to Meath then in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005. I could not get broadband. I could not get anything close to it. I was in the bog. Right? So they really need to. Anyway, that's for a separate rant.
You remember Ennis was a digital town? I remember being a young fella. I'd been really jealous and very envious of all these people in Ennis who were Ireland's first digital town, and I was still in school at that stage, so.
But you see, you have to look at all this now, right? We're talking about rolling out the rural broadband tender, which we know is in and around the 3 billion, okay? And then you're looking at a National Children's Hospital that's
3 billion.
It's lost control of itself.
Yeah.
But you're also looking at a facility that'll never be at 100% occupancy, or even at 100% going. Like, it'll never be fully operational to its full capacity. And then you're looking at sort of the health service at the moment. I mean, that got a 3 billion top up this year. And they've managed 26 ICU beds out of it. An extra 26 ICU beds. Everything is going on. And at the same time, like the lads, what you're saying about who are accountable, who are you going to hold accountable? You're looking at judges, you're looking at ministers, you're looking at TDs. The decision makers on the NPET, well, they're not really decision makers. They come up with a plan, they give it to government, the government decide then what to do, right? And like, none of them are hit one iota, Jimmy. None of them have had any gigs cancelled.
You're talking to Mr. Article 47 and 48. We've been through this before.
We did, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, can you imagine if we could just get 100,000 petitions online, which you do in about 3 minutes now, and say, Stephen Donnelly, you're out of there, because you didn't even show up today for questions and answers. You know what I mean? In the Dáil. He wasn't even fucking there. I mean, these guys, they've got to be fired. Is what we can't be sitting around waiting for another election to happen. But, okay, I've moved off Donnelly. That's the Minister of Health. But
Yeah.
you know.
But you see, the penalty for not doing your job or for making these catastrophic mistakes that actually hit the taxpayer, okay? And it kind of reminds me of the money message. You can't get a bill through the door unless it has a money message signed off on it, because it would hit the taxpayer. Yes, they could throw money into the HSE and into the National Children's Hospital, and there's no comeback on it. And you're talking about Stephen Donnelly. Sure, even if Stephen Donnelly didn't show up for work anymore, if he stepped down as a minister and just didn't show up until the next general election and he just didn't bother running again, he still has a pension for life.
Sure.
Do you know what I'm saying, folks? I mean, he's not getting the full ministerial because he hasn't got the full term. But I tell you, that lad won't be, counting his few bob at the end of the week and knowing whether he can buy the big tin of beans or the small tin of beans.
Well,
he's not going to worry about whether he needs a bottle of gas or not.
It's interesting because I was thinking about Noel Dempsey, actually, getting back to the computer. And he's in Florida, just happy as
registered lobbyist as well, who was at the same table as Phil
Darcy, really?
Dempsey, yeah. No. Registered lobbyist. And nobody said a word about him.
Tragically a Mead man, but there you go. But no
another teacher there, Derek.
Former.
So speaking of Derek, because I think we've accomplished nothing for the government there. They're going to just have to fix it. JDF Reality in the chat page, you're welcome to join us in the chat page, has asked a question, very valid question, about why did we outsource the estimated grades or the calculated grades to a Canadian company?
Well, obviously our own educators and college professors aren't good enough.
They could have outsourced it to Los Gatos in California. We know.
You should have been in there with your pitch.
Should have been in there.
And we'll stick with you, Derek, and move on.
Everybody would have been happy if I'd been in charge because everybody would have got a higher grade than they expected. So.
Yeah, but that's the problem. People got higher grades that weren't expecting them, and those that were expecting higher grades didn't get them. This is where the legal actions are. Like it's 96% reduction of in average points. 96% reduction in the Institute of Education. Like they are known high achievers.
We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. I want to stick with you, Derek, because there's been news in the US this week. We had the great debate, the late great debate. We won't talk about the content of the debate because I think it's been well covered and we all know how that went. But I am interested.
Oh, get ready for this one.
What content?
But I am interested though, Derek. I know you're in a very blue state, a very blue city, and all the rest. But what has been the aftermath? I've never really believed these debates make any difference anyway. But has this had an impact in a way that people have changed their minds? People are, where's the needle now with voters?
Have the undecideds made a decision?
First of all, I don't know how anybody could be undecided at this stage in after 3 years of this rubbish that we have to put up with. I don't know how anybody is undecided. Either they're fully behind Trump or they can't wait to get rid of him. The debate was shocking, as you know. Trump was just being his usual bullying self. His skill is that he's just able to dominate the agenda. He's able to be the story all the time. But he's a disgrace. I think what's happened is anybody who turned on the debate and just looked at it for 5 minutes, the casual observer would have saw a very dominant person walking all over a very weak person, and that might sway people who are impressed by that. I think from the coverage and from what people have been saying, I think Trump done himself no favors. Even some of his own supporters are saying that he was too aggressive and came across really badly. What is done to the undecideds? I'd say it might have made a lot of people decide not to vote, to ignore the election, and just go like it's one's bad, the other is worse. But Biden came across as being, I thought, very feeble. And allowed himself to be walked over. Trump was obnoxious, and what's going to do to? I think I'm really worried. And I said this months ago. I'm really worried for democracy, and he's nailed it to the mast on live television last week. He's not accepting the result of the election, right? And he called the Proud Boys to stand by.
Yeah, but sorry, Derek, I'm going to step in here.
Ultra racist.
We know he's done all this, right? But you know what? He's not the only presidential candidate that has been ready to challenge the result. Every campaign has lawyers ready to go in every town where the machines are being counted.
There's a big difference between.
And
That's
Bush
true.
Jr. challenged the result as well.
There's a big difference between challenging a process where there may be irregularities. That's perfectly like you'd say even George Bush and Al Gore, go back to that. Like there was something to be argued over there. It was a legitimate reason to challenge. What Trump is suggesting, I think, is for her. This is not just a legal battle. He's suggesting.
Yeah, but you see, Trump.
I think what he's suggesting is actually physically refusing. Like
he's just blowing smoke.
That's kind of a narrative thing, but I mean, what's actually happened is the Democrats haven't accepted the 2016 result. Is what the real problem is, and as a result, for the last 3.5 years, all they've been doing is
cribbing.
Cribbing and moaning and bitching about Trump instead of getting a Biden. Seriously, Biden was a weak vice president. Is a pathetic fucking anomaly.
If America, Jimmy, you live there as well now, right? If America was that upset about the 2016 result, and I use these examples all the time, with all their Olympic medal winners and Nobel Prize winners and writers and Oscar winners, and all these brilliant minds and all the schools, all their big Ivy League schools in the top 100 in the world, and all these brilliant inventions and patents and all this brilliance, all these people are eligible to run for president in the US. And the best that they've come up with in 3.5 years was Joe Biden. That means, and it's the same here, folks, is that we're politics, people that we're electing, right? And I'm not, maybe it's the voter as well, but it's not. But I mean, there's people there being put into jobs. And I even said it there a couple of weeks ago about Regina Doherty, right? If Regina Doherty had got the job in Europe as commissioner, I was joining Fine Gael. It's a fuck is that? I was in that space. And, if America was really that upset about Trump, they would have found a candidate, as you say, back in 2016. They'd have worked them, they'd have groomed them, they'd have got the money together, they'd have developed a campaign, they'd have had a constituency office or whatever they call them in America in every town across the states. They would have had every electoral college vote hammered. They've had over 3.5 years and they've done nothing.
No, they're in total disarray as a party, clearly.
And the debate reflected that. It reflected politics in America. Just bitchy and dismal and uninteresting and completely unexcited. I mean, you have to say, thank Christ Bobby Kennedy is dead. He didn't live to see this shit show. Because that's what it is. And if you really think the world gives a shite, they don't. They don't. And Derek, you keep talking about the Trump and the army. I mean, America doesn't really give a shit about its defense forces. If they did, they'd make sure they were paid a living wage, or that their veterans affairs were fully funded. They put more effort into the due diligence of military contracts than they do into the welfare of their boots on the street, if I could put it like that.
What are you accusing me of saying there?
You're on about Trump's attitude to the army and the defense forces. America is a lot to talk about things he said about the other, about
Proud Boys,
injured soldiers and about bounties on their heads and stuff like that.
Oh, his lack of respect for them. His lack of respect for them.
But there's a lack of respect for the defense forces in America anyway.
Absolutely. You only have to look outside any 7-Eleven. There's always a couple of vets sitting in wheelchairs and VFWs and all that stuff. So
they put more effort into arranging and managing military contracts
and the theatre of remembrance, all that.
All this than they do in looking after their
it's an interesting thing with Trump, actually, that
personnel.
I'm not a fan of any by any description of Trump, of course, but how he's been demonized for not, for being a Vietnam draft dodger, which was a badge of honor actually for years with the left. All the hippie guys were like, I'm not fighting in Vietnam, man, and they all pretended they were schizophrenic or whatever, and it was kind of a badge of honor. It was a very right-wing thing to be gung-ho about, Semper Fi going to Vietnam and stuff, and now it's been turned around that he's been accused. It's just, I find it interesting and ironic.
I think he's called people suckers. I think he called those that
he did,
followed up suckers, which in fairness was a childish and immature.
Let me throw in
an
anecdote at this juncture. When I lived in Detroit, I had a band, and the four guys in the band were all much older than me. They were all Vietnam draft dodgers, every one of them. And we're doing a gig one time for a bunch of bikers who are all ex-Marines. And they're getting very Semper Fi, right? And I realized halfway through, geez, all these guys are draft dodgers. They're all cowards, and these guys have to find out they'll kill us, But we got through it.
What did you say? What was the set?
I was classic rock, get your motor running, that kind of stuff. Whatever.
Lynyrd Skynyrd,
Ted Nugent, whatever. Rock, guitar, rock. It was a gig, What's the proper concert?
Sorry, can I just need to say this. This is not normal times. This is not a normal presidential race. Normally, I would completely agree with, I would be able to point out and laugh at and slag the Democrats for their hypocrisy and their weakness if it was a normal scenario. This is not a normal scenario.
No.
We are we've never had a man like this before with so much power. He is not going to let go of his power. This is a threat to democracy. If American democracy falls, that will have a major impact around the world. Love America or hate America, it's going to have serious repercussions.
No, I agree with that, and we shouldn't be making light of it. But you're right. I think there might be civil war there. I think that might actually happen. Some sort of. It's been brewing for a while with the Californians. Secession has been talked about many, many times. Right? The idea that such the result will be. I'll put money on this that Trump will win.
I do too. I think there'd be no doubt about it either this time.
I think the Democrats don't have a leg to stand on. There's not enough people to have a protest vote against Trump, So what is going to happen indeed? It's really scary times, Derek, over there. I'm glad I'm not there.
You know what's even scarier? That what if this is the new norm? What if it is these hairdos and fellas that fake tan?
It is. It clearly is.
Trump wasn't the first one. Bush Jr. wasn't their finest either, and they re-elected him.
That's true.
And you're talking about the man who actually made the word, who, in my opinion, with Tony Blair, made the world more dangerous with their weapons of mass destruction. I mean, that was a complete fraud perpetrated. So, I mean, and then you Obama elected, and there was great opportunity to do great things, but he signed in more gun legislation than Bush ever did. And now you have Trump. Trump hasn't bombed anybody.
There's three things I'll give Trump credit for. Right, one is that he hasn't invaded any country. Right, that's fair enough. Number two, he likes golf. I like golf.
Obama likes golf.
So does Phil Kogan.
Number three, he's made a point about water pressure in hotel restrooms. And the water pressure in hotel bathrooms is shocking. You have to press it 10 times to wash your hands. And Trump hates that. And I have to say, every time he says that, I go, well done, Donald, I agree with you. But apart from that, he is a waste of space. But he's so it's all about himself. You saw about his taxes. how.
But Derek, it's a bit like what we were talking about with our reaction to the education scandal here, which has just happened. I mean, if it's a fait accompli that Trump is going to get a second term, and I think it is. What are the Democrats going to do? What's like reasonable Americans? What's the plan?
Yeah. They tried impeachment.
Forget it. That was even a sham.
Party, right? There's some brilliant people in the Democratic Party. I think Adam Schiff was very, very good. I think Elizabeth Warren is super. I have a lot of time for Kamala Harris. I think she's
a bit of a shining light. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
But a bit late in the day coming.
But guys, you're saying about Kamala. Actually, yeah, it's a bit. You're talking about people that is just a bit too late in the day. The thing to remember is you're looking at you're actually looking at 4 candidates in November, and in my opinion, and it's that the most dangerous fucker in America is Mike Pence, and he's and it does look like they're back in for another term, and something happens to Trump, and there's no reason not to expect he's high risk. Like he's not the finest specimen. And there's your man, Mike Pence. And now they have another seat to fill for themselves in the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. We're focusing on the wrong guy here all the time.
I think Mitch McConnell is actually the most dangerous man in America.
Well, I suppose
because he has the brain and the strategy, and he has the power, and he plays the long game. He has like it's down to him that the Republicans now have control of the Supreme Court, and also the 300 federal judges at the lower level that he's appointed, because he wouldn't appoint any of Obama's stuff. So.
Yeah, but Dick Cheney was like that too,
Yeah.
Spring rolls, please.
I don't.
Spring rolls. I'd fancy some of them myself, actually. Have they got the vegetarian option?
Jeez.
Sorry.
We have it all here.
The kitchen is closing soon, so you have to interrupt me. I'm sorry.
A jelly and ice cream. I'm about to lose him. Dick Cheney, did a huge amount of damage as well. And I suppose we will know, it'll be a long time before we know the full depth of what Pence has been getting up to for the last 4 years as vice president. But ultimately, there was if you really look at what is in the Republicans' control today, the Democrats had plenty opportunity to anticipate that. It's strategic planning.
I tell you one thing Mike Pence hasn't done in the last 4 years, and that's have dinner alone with another woman that's not his wife. Because he won't go into a room with a woman by himself,
And you know what? There is a lot of sort of empathy for that lifestyle now. There's an awful lot of fundamentalist people that do think that do see that as a way of life, that they can make that a way of life, and they can, make a life for themselves just like that. One of the most, you said Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is smart, but maybe he's there. Maybe Mitch McConnell is their 2024 candidate. Don't know.
He's old.
But I mean, the president is only as strong as his Senate, and if he controls the Senate, I mean, McConnell, Trump, and Mike Pence together, they will control America.
You're right about the growth in fundamental religious beliefs. I was in Lake Tahoe last weekend. Went up for a seed in the summertime, and we saw people walking down the street, like young kids, I'd say 15, 16-year-old boys with a t-shirt saying "Virginia, he rocks." Like, can you remember?
You should wear a t-shirt like that, Jimmy.
Can you remember?
I can't remember. Does it?
Jesus Christ. You know.
Yeah, but you see, in a post-COVID, environment, people are afraid of everything. You know, people
Well, I
are
mean,
afraid.
I'm not surprised with that. There's been, if that's happening here actually in Ireland. I noticed that a few years ago with college age students that after the, here with the collapse of the Catholic Church and stuff, that nature abhors a vacuum and society abhors a hole. There was a kind of a spirituality sized hole left. You're not saying the Roman Catholic Church was a good fill-up for that hole, but when it disappeared, a lot of kids were like, when I did my postgrad actually about 8 years ago, I did a 2-year research project on second year students, right? And they were music students, right? But as a an add-on to the research that I was doing, I used to do tutorials, a 25-minute, half-hour tutorial for each student, right? And it would be covering the stuff I was teaching. But there was also because there were music students, there was anxiety issues and all that stuff. So I said, listen, I've had a lot of experience at that. So if you want to talk about it, and if I think you'd be helped by going to the professionals, the psychiatric unit and all that stuff, I'll put you in touch, or we can just talk about it. 87% of the students that came to me for tutorials had major anxiety issues.
About sex?
No, not about sex, but just existential stuff. Sex is actually all right. That's
the easy bit.
But yeah, but no, existential angst. These kids are just, and it's like it was like a spiritual vacuum. So seeing some kid in Lake Tahoe walking around with Virginity Rocks, that's fine. That's a kind of reaction to that cisgender stuff. Isn't it the kind of the.
Yeah, but it's all about identity now. Everything you have to be one thing or another. Do you know what I mean? You just can't be Vanessa Ford now. You have to have a load of other. You have to identify yourself as a load of other stuff.
Like celebrity accountant and things like that. Yeah. Just before we go on to all things that, so just wrap up, Derek. In summary, then, the debate, the release of Trump's tax returns, his call to that racist group, none of this has made any kind of swing in the voting population. Is that fair to say?
I don't think so. I think people like his supporters are rock solid behind him. That's there's no doubt about that. I think the fear is the turnout, and I think maybe this is going to turn people off, and that'd be my biggest worry. I think if there's a turnout, if everybody shows up, I think he's beaten. But he needs to be beaten well, and the Republicans need to lose the Senate, for it to have much impact. But no, fundamentally, it is where it is. I mean, all the polls are showing that Trump or that Biden is ahead in all the swing states. Biden is winning the popular vote by 8-9 points.
So was Hillary.
And that's what I was just going to say. 3 days before the last election, I put out a tweet saying I'm calling this election Hillary in a landslide, based on the polls. My logic was okay, but it completely. Thank you. It completely blew up, and so to answer your question, the straight answer, Neil, I don't think anything that's happened has moved the dial. I think if you're a supporter of Trump, you're still with him, and if you're not a supporter of Trump, you want him gone. I just cannot understand that 4 or 5% who are still undecided. I don't get how you could be undecided at this point. I don't know how you can look at Biden and go, I don't like him. I saw somebody saying, if you go into a Taco Bell and there's only 2 items on the menu, rat poison or a taco, you go, well, I don't really like tacos, but give me the rat poison. That's the sort of where we're at with this,
Yeah, that's kind of polemic as well. That's not helpful. That's not encouraging people to have a proper, sensible, grown-up conversation about their political representation, and that sort of talk needs to stop. It needs to be a lot more reasonable than that. And I think there's far too much made, and this is where Hillary made the mistake as well. She was very sneery about Trump, and okay, but he was never letting on he was mastermind or, world's greatest lawyer or all this. Trump actually was just Trump. And the idea that you don't vote for him because he's stupid or he pays his taxes are in shit and he looks ridiculous and is this, that, and the other, that's not going to cut it. It's not, because they're looking at Biden and they're saying, Jesus, another out fella. Another hack. Another has been
47-year-old, career politician. One more,
Here we go again. And that's what they're looking at.
This is what Trump is brilliant at. I mean, one of the takeaway lines from the debate was, "I've done more in 47 months than you've done in 47 years." And like a child can understand that. It's bullshit. It's absolute complete and utter bullshit. Trump has done fuck all. Pardon my language. He's
but look at it that way.
He's no achievements to his name. None.
Yeah, but look what he hasn't done. Maybe sometimes it's what you don't do. Look what he hasn't done.
And it's not bullshit. I mean, I think there's certainly here, or maybe I'm wrong as well, but there's a sense of we're jaded with career politicians, with that fucking one more Manchurian candidate character just coming up, just crawling his way up through the ranks, another Simon Harris, and then getting somewhere and just being totally inept at fucking anything. And Biden is one of those guys. Whatever you say about Trump, he made a living or a life outside of politics.
Nice. He's nice, Joe. He's nice. He's fun. Is he though?
Is he nice? I mean, are any of those guys nice?
You can't put someone nice into the White House. You can't just somebody nice as Taoiseach. They have to have the killer instinct. They have to be able to cut their losses and move on. They have to be able to make billion-dollar decisions without looking back. I suppose it go back to our own scene here. All the guys we have making those decisions are responsible for our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
They are totally untouchable. They are completely unaccountable. There is no penalty for being shit. There's no penalty for being a complete bollocks. You go back to the Gardaí and you look at Nora and you look at Noreen and Calman before her. Like, it didn't matter what anyone had to say about them or how much trouble they got in. Totally untouched. They didn't lose a wink of sleep. They didn't lose a
It's really interesting.
No penalties, no fines. Their professional reputations weren't in the slightest bit touched or imposed upon.
It's really interesting because that thing with O'Reilly House being demolished this week was just another little thing that made me consider why do we think at any point in America or in the UK that history is over? Is there no does nobody entertain the possibility that, Derek, you started off by saying you don't want to in terms of accountability, you don't want heads to roll. Maybe it's time for heads to roll. Maybe literally, maybe summary execution is too good for some of these guys. It did happen before. It happened 100 years ago to a degree. And it's happening all the time. History has not stopped. We have this, we have this cozy idea that history is over, and these characters carrying on, running neoliberalism into the fucking wall and destroying all of us. But there might be the tipping point here might be something I discussed earlier on. I don't drink. I haven't drank in 26 years, but because of the rise in cases here, there's a bit of a rumor going around that they're going to shut down off licenses. So if that happens in Dublin, I can tell you that's war. A
prominent Fianna Fáiler said that to me 2 weeks ago. The day the pubs opened, actually, the day pubs were opened on a Monday, and I was talking to her on the Tuesday, and this person owns a pub.
Well, if that happens,
and she was adamant the best thing to do was to shut down all alcohol sales.
That would be pitchforks and Lee Remington's on Dawson Street right there. I'm telling you.
Yeah, but then you have to wonder then, like, how has it got this bad? Why is it still going on?
Well, why do we have to wonder? It's Occam's razor. It's patently obvious. We're ruled by
people are still catching it. So how do we stop people catching it?
Well, Leo made an interesting comment yesterday, making reference to the Belgian the new Belgian model, which is to focus on hospitalizations rather than number of cases. But we're seeing Tony Holohan coming back in the hot seat next week, so I think
I'd say he's gone mad at Beckett. It didn't go away when he was in.
Well, I didn't want to be uncharitable. His wife is very ill and stuff, but he's kind of a superstar guy now, isn't he? He's kind of come up the big. He's kind of a rock star guy.
But you see, you have to ask what is the purpose of NEFIT. Like they give these press briefings and they give out these advices and they give out the data, you know, the numbers, but they only give advices. It then goes it goes to a committee and then to the government.
Yeah, this is the thing: is people are too focused on NFIT running the country and things like that. NFIT are doing their job and they're doing it to the best of their ability. They're doctors, and they have a mandate. It's the politicians that take the advice on board.
Neil?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly refer back to what Jimmy was saying there about the end of history and people thinking history is over. And this feeds into your point here about like, you know, doctors have a job to do. They have to give their advice, but the politicians are elected by the people to make decisions, right? I'm really worried. Like I'm not a tin hat person or a file hat or whatever. But I'm really worried about the drift towards authoritarianism that I'm seeing in the States and around in Europe. I mean, we have Orban in Hungary has basically he's ruling by decree.
That's right.
A member state of the European Union. You see what's happening in Poland. You see what's happening with Brexit in the UK. There is this drift towards the idea of the strong man again.
Absolutely.
And having somebody in charge, and it's really, really worrying, and sort of the fear is when you like look at I have my mask here, right? I will wear my mask because I think I'm helping other people as much as myself. I will socially distance, stuff like that. I will take the advice from medical people to try and stop the pandemic, but I'm always very, very worried about giving power to experts. And making experts who aren't elected, at least the Norman Foley's, the Leo Varadkars, they're people who we've elected and we can't vote them out. I'm really concerned that there's this drift towards like let's put the expert in charge. Let's have this strong man who will sort everything out for us.
Yeah, do you know, Derek? We call them government advisors now. Experts.
And what we say in I think we mentioned this before. Like if you get a job as a minister, obviously you want to take the best advice possible, right? But you have to do what you want to do. You have to try and make your mark. You have to go, this is my club, this is why I come in. And if your advisors tell you it can't be done, you have to find a way of making your philosophy run and work, you know. And what happens is the advisors take over, the civil service take over, batten down the hatches, keep things as they are. That sort of like middle management mentality, you know, that like let's just keep things ticking over, you know, instead of like a vision and like electing people to represent the will of the people, you know. Like I believe in freedom and I believe in democracy and I believe in the wisdom of the people. Like when, say for example, when the people were ahead of the leaders in terms of gay rights issue, right? Equal marriage. The people were far ahead of the leaders, right? That's just a simple example. But I do believe in the idea of democracy and the idea that the people do know what's best, right? And so therefore, when we move away from that, when we take, there should be more democracy at a more local level. That's all the better. It's the thing that worries me about the European Union is that the power has been sucked up and it's become this super level power, whereas power should be devolve down to the most local level possible. That's the way I see it. And
sorry, Derek.
And as I said,
Yeah, but Derek,
what I'm seeing is the rest of the world
we have that here.
disengaged, and
we have. Well, sorry now, but do you look at the local authority election? It's €100 to put your name on the ballot. €100. 600 first preferences will get you elected. Like, so, I mean, how
they have very little
voice at the local level. That's what you were talking about. They have a voice at the local level. They have and that local election and that local councillors have an immediate impact in their local area. You look at a minister, like it go rural broadband, that takes years. Somebody else gets to cut the ribbon on that. You know, the National Children's Hospital, by the time that's even open, all the lads will be gone. There'll be a different Minister for Health will be cutting the ribbon on it. At least at local level, you know, they're face to face with their voters all the time. Yes and
no. We know that the big parties co-opt those guys, county councillors.
We do, yeah, we do. But that's party whip. That's the party whip, which is probably the thing that has ruined political parties in Ireland. Is the whip vote, and it's one of the reasons that you don't get enough independence is that you do need a party machine behind you to get elected. Okay, you can point to Mick Wallace being an independent, Michael Healy-Rae. They all had huge profiles before they ran for office. They didn't come off the street.
Vanessa, I wrote an article about that on my blog, theirishguy.org. The headline was "Sit, Act and Vote" was the headline. I wrote it a few months ago, about that very, very issue, about the party whip and how much of a problem it was, and how it came about because of Charles Stewart Parnell in the English Parliament when he was trying to get the Irish MPs to stick together, and it was a very effective tactic for him to be able to use as a negotiating tool to try and get home rule on the table. But it's a 19th century tactic,
but so is PR voting. We didn't grow out of that either since the 19th century.
No, but the PR is a good idea, I think. But like the Senate in the United States is supposed to be the greatest deliberation body in the world, and the idea that people can go in and actually, you know, make a speech, and the last 3 or 4 years it has been totally along party lines. But traditionally, people would, like, you could win a vote that was even if you didn't have the majority, because people were independent. They're senators, but they're more independently minded. That's not the case the last 3 or 4 years, granted. But I think that, say for example in the Dáil, let's say pick somebody in the opposition. Mary Lou has an idea for how to solve the education crisis. If it's a good idea, right, and I'm an intelligent person in Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, why wouldn't I back that idea? Why not run with it? Why do I like?
Yeah, but that's nothing to do with the party whip. That has to do with the caliber of politicians we've seen get elected over the last 15, 20, 30 years. If you go back to the 40s, 50s, 60s and 70s and even 80s, you had those debates between party members on all sides of the house. Those debates did go on. And even if you go, say, when Brian Cowan, when Bertie Ahern was Minister for Finance, what was Brian Cowan's job? Was he Justice then or Minister for Industry? Like he was able to speak and debate on all sorts of topics with lads across the house from him.
Well, it's just jumping into the past, but looking at the present, I'm getting back to what Derek was saying. I mean, based on current events, we're seeing more leadership from Europe and how they're speaking and talking about Brexit than we're seeing in Ireland. The whole travel issue in Europe, we're seeing a lot from that, and Ireland is sitting on its hands waiting to see what's going to happen in this meeting next month. So, maybe we can argue that we didn't vote for people in power in Europe, but they're doing a hell of a lot more in terms of showing leadership right now than the people we've elected. So maybe we should allow people who are unelected call the shots here and see how that goes for a while. Speaking of which, because we're coming up to nearly the end. Vanessa, I wanted to ask you about the Supreme Court, our friend Judge.
I know.
What's happening?
I still can't get over this guy. He didn't know there was a dinner, but he still ate it.
Yeah.
Even after he'd eaten it, like.
You friends in high places. I don't know if he's on your Christmas card list and all the rest,
No.
or if you're gutted for him or what have you. But what do you make of all this? I mean, you're in the courts more than the rest of us for genuine reasons. What do you make of all this? I mean, to me, it kind of comes back to what I said a few weeks ago. The bigger issue with him attending the Oireachtas golf thing was the segregation of separation of powers. It wasn't appropriate.
That wouldn't bother me at all, because you are going to. That's not something you can really enforce, because lads meet all the time, whether it's golf or down their holiday homes or sailing clubs or college societies or the charitable fundraisers. Ireland is too small for for paths like that not to cross, or for there to be familiarity for people. Kids go to school with each other. There's relatives. It's you can't enforce that, right? But if there is a conflict in front of you, if you're if you know the person arguing the case or you're connected. As long as the conflict is declared and everyone sees it, they can judge for themselves your own bias, right? So as long as people know that, as long as it's declared and it's out there, then let the onlooker decide for themselves. My problem with the whole judge going on the golf is I have no problem with him going to a golf trip at all. I don't care that he's a member of the Oireachtas Golf Society. I'd say I could probably join it myself. I'd say I'd have no problem getting a nomination for it. But here's the thing, though, right? Here's a man that helped author these restrictions.
The guidelines, yeah.
And as an attorney general, now he wasn't a clerk. He wasn't a junior assistant in the department of the junior minister for justice here, right? He wasn't even a special advisor. He was the Attorney General after a lifetime at the bar as a senior counsel and a member of the law library. And he co-authored this legislation and then decided it didn't apply to him. Now, according to the report today, or the one issued to Susan Denham, that went to the one Susan Denham came up with, and then to the Judicial Council. Here's the thing about that. They have decided that he was entitled to rely on other people's management of the restrictions, as in the hotel. He was on their premises, so it was up to them to mind it. But that's like me saying about my opinion, you could decide what you think of it yourself. So that's after leaving off Deloitte's, Ernst Young, KPMG, all those audit opinions. It doesn't matter. You decide what you think. That's it on the flip side. For them to say that he's entitled to rely on how they interpreted his own authored restrictions. So that's just after giving Deloitte and the audit of the FAI for 23 years. So it was up to yourselves to interpret it, lads.
It's like the whole. It's like the idea that taxes are for little people. It's the same. It's the same principle as. But I have a serious question to ask: who won the Golf Society out? We never got to the bottom of that.
I'd love to know what the prizes were, the fudgies, because they all go home with presents, from such and such insurance company and the raffle tickets and that. I'd love to know all that. But I'd remind everyone again, nobody has mentioned Brian Hayes. His name, not even the Phoenix magazine.
There's lots of chatter about him online and stuff, but there's no explanation of who he was with. You know who he was with. I know you know, but that's...
Well, I know who one of them is. Well, I know for sure, yeah. But I do. But what I get? Oh, do you know what? He's another teacher as well, there, Darren.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Yeah. And then there's Darcy now after joining the other guy.
Fuck that guy now. Here. Now there's more of the accountability. Leo Varadkar's got a duty of something has to be done about that. That's not. I mean,
it's up to the party executive to enforce some form of probity on their members. But Ken Fox was on this show years ago, right? And him and I, we co-wrote a thing together about probity in politics and about how incoming TD should all have to do induction and do mandatory ethics every year. Like I have to do a few hours of ethics every year, and I have to do AML and all this. And they should have to do it as well. And Neil, how many times have you heard me say this? Why am I held to a higher standard than the Minister for Finance or the Minister for Health?
Exactly. Why?
Yes.
Can I ask?
That's I'm telling you. I am. Go on.
Can I ask? Why aren't we attracting people into politics? Like, there's 4 of us here having a chat here now, and we all have like strong opinions and good ideas, and we're all bright and intelligent. But I certainly wouldn't put my name on a ballot. And I'm wondering what you guys think. Like, what's stopping us from putting our names on a ballot and trying to change things? I'm just like, it's quite simple, Derek, in my opinion. And I had a little run at politics myself a couple of years ago. Did you?
Well, not really politics, but it was a very, very illuminating.
It was more about a campaign than winning.
Yeah. But it was very illuminating, and that's, you talked about tinfoil hattery and conspiracy men and all that. Literally, you're dealing with lizard people. That's what you're dealing with. Yeah. These characters who join Ogra Fianna Fáil and young Fine Gael, and they're little right-wing neo-libertarians from 12 years old, and they're the kind of kids that used to get the shite kicked out of them at school. You knew the kind, you knew the type, and you wouldn't hang out with them. They were slithery fuckers, they were no good at anything but arse licking, this kind. And it's like, it's a distasteful business. It's really, and it's only for the lizard people, I think. And I would like to see a change, but there's none of them. I've often thought of that. I mean, if I had Leo and Simon and you name them, apart from some of my Sinn Féin friends who are reasonable people, but these characters, if you were sitting in a room with these guys for any more than 10 minutes, you'd want to just knife them.
There's no interest. There's nothing exciting or interesting. Nobody would want to hang out with. No. Well, I suppose there's a handful now that I would push my way to hang out with. But if you want about putting yourself on the ballot, right? The best election to give it a go is the local election, and you just go door to door, and you'd be very surprised at the reaction. Anyone that's not a party, and you go door to door and actually ask people for their vote, would get a response. Will return. If you're going into national politics, you'd absolutely need the party. You definitely need a party behind you.
Well, you've seen the famous Vincent Brown and Stephen Donnelly exchange. Did you see that?
When he was an independent.
And he left the Social Democrats, and he left Roisin Shortall, and he joined Fianna Fáil after excoriating them for years. And Vincent Brown took him to task in a big way about it. It was fantastic. And it's like, that's Irish politics writ large right there. Yeah, man.
But you see... Sorry, Jimmy, he exploited the bank bailout at the time, and he made a name for himself by pretending he knew more, by trying to let on he knew more. He was a sort of more palatable Shane Ross. And when he ran as an independent, was on the back of just putting himself out there, bringing every producer in the country to let him on to talk about the banks. And that's how he actually had his timing was impeccable. But when he went to the and we've said this before, it's impossible to establish his political principles or his
Doesn't have any. He clearly doesn't have any. And Vince Byrne made a good point.
He's in it for the gig. He's in it for the gig, and he's been trained for that.
Derek, I'll give you the last word on the topic.
Okay. I think people have been ridiculously hard on. I think it's a very brave thing to put your name on a ballot and stand up and be counted. And I think it's too easy. Just say, oh, they're lizard people, or they're like, you know, they're different to the rest of us. My own brother is my younger brother stood for a council election and he got elected. And I can assure you, there's nobody you would like to spend more time with than my brother. He's an incredible young fella. Got elected when he was 25. He was approached to stand because of the work he was doing in the community. He got involved in the local GA club, and he asked my advice before I said to him, listen, don't get involved in the GA club. They're sharks, you know. But at the age of, like, I think he was 22, he was chairman of the GA club, right? No matter what was happening in our local village, he was there because he believes that Rathvilly is the center of the universe. He thinks it's the greatest place on earth, and he wants to make it better. And he had no intention of running. He was approached to run, and he ran. And he's trying to do his very, very best for the locality.
Derek, with the greatest respect, you're misinterpreting that, because
I admire his bravery,
and I understand that, and fair play. But he's not running a major portfolio, and he's not one of the major parties, I presume, right?
But again, Derek,
my question was, my question was, why don't the rest of us have his bravery to stand up and try and make a difference? That's what
we've done. Jimmy and I have put ourselves forward for election before. Yeah. I put myself on a ballot, and Jimmy threw himself into an election that turned out to be a fucking. There was serious fallout from.
Okay,
if you are going to election, local election is a great opportunity. The national election, you have to be in a party.
That's it. And
no doubt about it.
And I would specifically, Derek, I'm talking about the guys, I would say Simon Harris comes to mind. People like that who just, well, how old is Simon Harris? 34. How old is your brother? Probably a little older than that, I'm imagining.
He's 30.
There you go. And this guy at 34 just comes out of seemingly nowhere but a career in Fine Gael, a favoured, one of these Manchurian characters who gets up, but who's now the minister. He's in charge of third level education, having not gone to. I mean, this is very weird. It's very odd to me that there's no merit there. There's not.
And that's the system. And so why don't we try to change the system? It's probably like, let's get involved. Let's, you know, that's like, you know, like I asked again before, who's the last politician of serious stature or gravitas that you can think of in the country? And I think Michael D. Higgins has it to a degree. You know, Michael D. Higgins is the guy that has the gravitas of a leader, to my mind. And after that, I'm struggling. I cannot think of anybody who has that sort of level of intellect or level of ideas.
And what you're describing is everybody else's ennui about politics. And that's why when you talked about earlier on about this strong man swing to the right, I see it. The authoritarian, the totalitarian thing is really happening. Absolutely. And that's why that's happening, because people are disillusioned with normal politics, with the status quo. It's bullshit. It really is. And I don't mean any disrespect to your brother. That's, you know.
But your brother would still follow the party, with no doubt about it, Jerry.
No. He actually he's an independent thinker. For example, I didn't want to be talking about this here, but one of the big things he wanted was for like a playground in the local village, right? And in order to get this playground, he proposed 4 years ago, whatever it was, raising property taxes to pay for the playground, to ring fence it and pay for that. He went to get his colleagues were against it, or they told him this is madness. He took an awful lot of shit online. but he wanted to get a playground for the community, and he took the shit, and he did the, this unpopular thing, So he's, I'm telling you, he's a good guy, and he's in it for the right reasons, and I believe that I think all politicians think they're in it for the right reasons. I think nobody goes in with the idea of like doing people harm. Like, obviously there's certain incompetence that, and they're in a level that they can't cope with, and I understand all that. And if somebody is incompetent, then they need to be gone. I agree, but I do think. And look, I'm as critical of the ministers as anybody else. I'm as critical of all the governments that we've had since I've been an adult. But I do think the vast majority of people go in for the right reasons. I think that, like, they don't go in with the intention of messing up. They don't go in with the intention of hurting people.
And so you don't subscribe to the idea that there's like an entitled class. I mean, I'm from County Meath, and I know the dynasties, various Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael dynasties, the McEntees, the Fitzsimons, all these people who have 3-4 generations groomed to be Fianna Fáil TDs. And they have a sense of entitlement that is just palpable. And I know them personally. I grew up with them, and they were separate from us at school, even as kids. It was like, oh, he's going to be, and that's it. And these people weren't in any way altruists. Derek, don't kid yourself for 1 second. And it's a career for them as a family business.
Is. Yeah, it is.
On that
politics ultimately turns into a gig.
On that note, it's a good job to have during a global pandemic, because you won't be on the PUP, and it's very easy to have people stay at home and not go to their friend's house. On that note, I just want to thank all of our panelists for tonight. We'll go in reverse order this time. The king of the spring rolls, sculling points there in Los Gatos, wiping the ash off his iPad.
Living the dream.
Hard life there, Derek. Hard life. Derek O'Donoghue, thank you.
Okay, literally, my iPad is covered in ash. I'm not joking. It's falling here, but my beer is going well, I have to say. So
I think Trump has killed your camera on you, Derek. Yeah. He's not talking anymore. And our man in the DNS, Jimmy Smith. Thank you very much, Jimmy.
You're welcome. Nice to be along with it. Meeting you crazy cats, mixed up kids is great.
And celebrity accountant, Countess of Crumlin. You'll find her in Crumlin Shopping Centre. Vanessa Foran.
Just to plug Jimmy's record. Jimmy has a new album.
Thank you. That's my name just there, small and small.
It was a
I'll in vinyl in a couple of weeks.
Brilliant. Is it available on
It comes
out
on
the Amazon.
It comes out in the Amazon in the States on, I think, early November, but it comes out on vinyl as well at that point. So you can pick up both if you're a vinyl phobe file.
Home Thoughts, Carrie with Jimmy Smith.
I'm going to give
duets. It's lovely.
And Jimmy's going to be doing a live stream of it next Thursday.
I was thinking of maybe spicing things up, but like.
Go on. Sing us out, Jimmy.
No, I'm not.
Before Jimmy sings us out, I'm going to give the last word to JDF Reality. Posted a comment there, which I didn't pick up. Just in relation to the last item, Jimmy has said, or sorry, not Jimmy, JDF Reality has said, I think the panel have gotten it wrong. It's not just the politicians. They're only there for a couple of terms. What about the civil servants and technocrats behind them? Fair point.
Good point. Yeah.
On that note of positivity, thank you for tuning in. We will be back next week when no doubt Ireland will be burning, and it won't be ash on Derek's iPad we'll be worrying about. It'll be the smouldering ruins of our lives in Ireland. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us in the chat box and on the site. We'll see you on the site tomorrow. Behave yourselves. Stay home and put up an umbrella if you go out in the rain. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.